Welcome to Let's Get Curious. In today's episode, we are going to cover a very common topic that I hear from women when they say, I just don't trust my husband to do anything. Well, today we're going to look at a listener's question. I want to actually read to you exactly what she said and see if it resonates for you in any way. And then I will share my thoughts and what I would encourage her to consider. So this is from our listener named Heather. And she says, I've lost respect and trust for my husband because he won't help fix anything around the house. It's chaos with a new baby, trying to make it work for the child. But my brother visited for an hour and fixed more than the husband in 2 years. Because he's careless, I don't trust him with anything, or I don't trust him to install a car seat. He's mad, I question and disrespect him. I hear a lot in what Heather has shared, and I hear a lot of myself in that years ago when I was viewing my marriage in this way. The most common thing I hear in what Heather has shared is contempt. And contempt it's poisonous, it is villainous, and it really, really blinds us to what we're contributing to what we have. So, as I said, I resonate. I've been there. I was Heather in my marriage for many years. And the thing is that contempt brings us to lose our ability to ask questions, which is vital to solving anything, any of the challenges. Now, first, I want to explain that in a marriage, we set up a system. So Heather and her husband have set up a system, and she's seen her skewed view. So when we set up a system, most of what we set up is subconscious. We're not aware we're setting up the system. But it isn't by chance that Heather and her husband were attracted to each other. And it isn't by chance that Heather's husband isn't helping. It isn't by chance that Heather's brother comes in and somehow she's able to get him to do the things she's wanting her husband to do. Now, I don't know exactly what's going on with her husband, but there seems to be some major challenges. And most importantly, if you listen to the words that Heather's using, she's describing the contempt that's in her. So when we are in contempt towards our spouse, when we are at this level of disrespecting, disregarding, and seeing ourselves as above our spouse, we literally won't see our part. We will blind ourselves. The way the confirmation bias works in the human DNA is that we literally blind ourselves to 99.5% of what's going on. And the biggest part we're blinding ourselves is to the part that we're playing. So the question I would invite, Heather to ask is, what is it? What if how this system works between my husband and I is actually what I want? Now, that's the hardest and the most uncomfortable question to ask, because marriage is a system that we build. And scientists have proven that as human beings, what we have, the results we're currently getting, are actually for our benefits and our advantages. That the way something is not by accident. We set it up that way for the benefits and the advantages that we get. Now, I cannot speak for Heather. I can only speak for myself, right? If I were coaching Heather, if I were working with Heather, there is a lot of questions that I would ask to invite her to see the reality of what benefits she might be getting out of this system. So the benefits that we get, they're not benefits that we want to admit. So for example, when my husband and I got married, I did all the housework and he did the work outside of the house. Now, like the lawn work and the work on the cars. We didn't ever sit down one day when we first got married and say, hey, I'll do everything inside, you do everything outside. We came into the marriage with these preconceived ideas and it just kind of morphed into that. And it would come up in conversations and things like that. But I was getting really bitter and resentful that my husband wasn't helping with things inside of the home. And I had decided that he just was lazy and he didn't want to help me. And, there was one huge fight that we had after I had had our fourth baby, and I was hurting and I was exhausted and I was tired, and he was laying on the couch watching a sports game. And I was on the floor scrubbing the floor. And I think I was 3 days post delivery. And I was furious. And the whole time I'm scrubbing the floor, I'm like, I would never do this to him. Well, what am I getting out of looking at it from I would never do this to him? I'm getting to be superior in my mind, right? I'm also getting to be the martyr. Like, here I am, woe is me. I'm doing this. And he's just sitting there looking at me. And I'm getting to feel quite arrogant about how good I am and how much better I am than him. I'm getting to be bitter. I'm getting to be resentful. I'm getting to be right about what at that time I thought was true about him was that he was just lazy and he didn't care about me. Now, these benefits, we don't recognize that we want them. Why would I want those things? Well, because getting those things allows me to see him as the problem. And until he changes, I don't have to change. So what it costs me is it costs me intimacy with him. It costs me love and connection. It costs me, growth. It costs me having the marriage that I long for. And when I began to see those things, I began to look at it isn't by chance that I never came to him that day, 3 days post-delivery, and said, hey, this floor feels sticky. Would you be willing to wash this floor in the next 2 hours before our company arrives? I didn't take responsibility to ask that kind of question. I just went in thinking, yeah, I'm going to wash this because I can't stand this floor. And I bet he won't even say a word. It's exactly what happened. Because that's what I was setting in motion. I actually didn't want him to help because then I got to be right. See, I knew it. I'd sit there 3 days after having our baby and he wouldn't even help me. This is what we do. The questions that we want to ask ourselves is, what am I contributing to what I don't want? What am I contributing to me losing respect for my spouse? My husband knew that if he wound up, at that time in our life, he knew to not try and interact with the things that were inside the house, because no matter what he did, it wasn't going to be good enough for me. And I was going to get mad, or I was going to do it over, or I was going to tell him, I couldn't count on him to do anything. I was contributing a lot to my lack of respect because I was actually not respecting him. Questions like, what am I contributing to losing trust with my husband? Well, what system have we built and how we've learned to trust each other, right? My husband learned to trust. Well, whatever I do, she's going to get pretty ticked at me. And I learned to trust that if I ask him for help, I wasn't going to be able to trust him to actually do the job that I wanted. This is the chaos we create in our home. And the thing you get to ask yourself is the chaos that you live in inside of yourself. How is that impacting your husband? How is that impacting you? How is that impacting your children? And if you want something different, there's only one thing that you can do that will actually create lasting change. And that is to look at you. Look at yourself. What is your part in the system? What is the system you and your husband have built? And what is your part in it? When you stop doing your part, it's like a dance. And they take their steps, you take your steps. If you want to change the dance, it just takes one person changing their steps. And since you can't control them or get them to change their steps, you get to look at your steps and what you're contributing. So I hope this is helpful for you, Heather. And if you're not Heather and this is resonating for you, I hope that it helps you. I know it's not easy to look at. It's not fun to look at. and it's uncomfortable work, but it is the work. The truth will set you free. If you're willing to look at the truth of your part, you'll change the system. And let's say that even after you change the system, even after you take responsibility for all of your parts, your husband still is unwilling to work with you. Your husband is still unwilling to help you in any way or show up in responsibility, then that's a different story. And that's something you need to look at. But at this point, you got to first start with you and see what happens, see what opens up from there. Thank you for joining me. I am Julia Woods, and I am passionate about helping couples create the marriage they long for by taking 100% responsibility for themselves. Thank you so much. If you need support, if you want to learn more about how to look at yourself, I want to invite you to join me in the Marriage Growth Community, where I will work with you individually and specifically to walk you through how to take responsibility for what you long for and for the part you're playing in what you don't. Thanks for joining me today.